This out the way. So welcome everybody. This is our February general meeting. We're just going to have some updates here from the Staten Island Coad, our latest updates. We'll also have Dr. Ginny and Tina presenting on the latest vaccine updates. And we'll also have a peer exchange at the end. For those that don't know, I'm sure most know by now, my name is Frank. I'm the Staten Island Coad program manager. So just a couple of things to go over at the start. Just remember, mute your mic if you're not speaking. Please drop your name and organization in the chat box for us, as well as email address. Remove all distractions. Feel free to get a beverage, grab some note-taking gear. We're going to have some resources for you today. And just thank you for your patience. We've got a lot going on here. We have Otter AI doing captioning. Just a quick reminder to everybody, please mute your mic if you're not presenting or speaking. We also like to practice accessibility and community agreement. So just as you start, say your name, your organization. As we share graphics, as you can see across the bottom, as we share graphics, we'll be sort of describing them for those that might need. So the graphic at the bottom is a woman with pink hair, an African-American man with gray hair, maybe balding a little bit, and a gentleman with a beard. Above them, some words, word bubbles, them saying the words respect, I statements, one voice, all ears, confidentiality. And again, one person, one mic, let's respect everybody. Move up, move back, just know when to speak and know when to let others speak. This is going to be really helpful for our breakout sessions later on, and also literacy moments. Feel free to stop us at any point if there are any questions or anything to bring up, if there's anything you're unfamiliar with, and we'll address that. Also, just the basic Zoom things, I'm sure we're all familiar by now, but there's the mute button on the bottom left. You can stop your video if you don't want to share. We are recording this session, so please feel free to take yourself off video if you don't want to be recorded. Let's keep going. There's the closed captioning we mentioned, as well as our Otter AI I mentioned earlier. Other things are, feel free to raise your hand if you have a point to make or something to bring up. There's also the chat box, which you can see the little chat icon at the bottom of the screen. Other things, you could adjust your views. So there are different speaker views, gallery views, especially with shared screen. You can adjust that in the view options. So I'll just go over today's agenda really quickly. I'm going to start off by talking about Staten Island Coad updates, and Linda Levin, our SINFPA intern, is going to help me talk about our Staten Island Stay Strong, Stay Safe campaign. And one thing I should say about this agenda, it's going to be a pretty fluidly moving agenda, largely because we have Dr. Ginny and Tina Campbell available to discuss what's going on Staten Island in terms of vaccines, local updates, and everything that we really need to know in terms of messaging misconceptions, different variances of the virus. But I'm sure that we're all going to have questions. I'm sure that there's going to be some fluid back and forth. So we're going to be mindful, particularly for 2/3 of this session, where we have our COVID updates, as well as that peer exchange. And we'll be playing the peer exchange by ear because we are breaking out into breakout sessions. So depending on the number of people joining us today, that will determine how many people are in each breakout group, how long the sessions will be, and sort of where we're going in terms of how long we're spending for each group to share out. We want to make sure that we respect everybody's time, and we're adjourning at noon. So thank you all for being here. First and foremost, I just want to go over a few things. I know that most people on this call know about these resources, but I just want to highlight how much they've taken, a front and center position with the Staten Island Coad. I would encourage everybody to check out all of our social media platforms, just because that's where our latest updates, that's where the latest information we've been sharing has been going. And sometimes it's as quick as, within a few minutes of us getting information, we're putting it on our Facebook pages, the Coad Facebook, SINFPA Facebook, our Instagram page, our Twitter, and even our LinkedIn. So please check all of those out. If you're not subscribed to those, if you're not following those pages, and you want the information that we have to share, please definitely check that out. I know not everybody uses social media, so we also send the SI Coad weekly emails, which yes, are long and are chock full of information, but please take a look at them and feel free to skim them and do Control F, take a look through them just to see if there's information that might be useful to you. If you're looking for vaccine info, we always have vaccine info right up at the top. And I should also mention something new we've been doing in those weekly emails is adding just a brief little note at the top saying, hey, if there's anything you're going to pay attention to that we'd really like you to address, it's going to be in the top part of that email. So just a couple of things we've been doing differently to make everything and all the information and resources as accessible as possible. So, well, let's get started on the Staten Island Coad and MES updates. Recently, we had our town hall. It was called What Staten Islanders Need to Know. If you'd like a video or the transcript or resources or even the slide deck, please email me. That's my email right there, frank@sinfpa.org. It was just a really great success. We had a huge community outpouring, 140 registrants, over 100 attendees, a great mix of community leaders and community members as well. So it led to some interesting discussion and back and forth and answering some questions that were both at the community leader level, but also at the ground level, really grassroots. Additionally, we had a bevy of guest speakers. We had Satanji Agosa, the Chief of Staff of Assemblyman Charles Fall. We had Dr. Rosen, who spoke on behalf of DOH-MH, clearing up vaccine concerns and misconceptions. We also had Community Health Action of Staten Island discussing vaccine logistics. We had Lachlan Mena, their executive director, Yesenia Mata, speaking about the impact of the immigrant community and how to move forward on Staten Island. And we had many faith-based leaders, as well as other community leaders, just speak about their experiences getting the vaccine or planning to get the vaccine, and really discussing why it's so important that we do these things. So it was just a great opportunity for everybody to discuss why it's so important to get the vaccine, why, if you have the ability to go get it, to please go get it. And last but not least, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Dr. Ginny Mantello and Tina Campbell doing the Q&A during that town hall. I just know that was such a valuable resource, as they will be today. One thing I want to highlight is our needs assessment survey. We've been putting this out over the last 2 weeks or so, but the Staten Island Coad's been trying to determine the organizational needs and level of urgency for PPE and other resources on Staten Island. So Linda or Shamila, if you don't mind dropping the SurveyMonkey link in the chat, just so people can click on that following this. But if your organization feels like they need any resources, or if you know an organization that needs resources, please feel free to follow that link or share that link out. We're going to be continuing to assess those survey responses over the next couple of days. So please go ahead and follow that link and share that out with as many community leaders as possible. Thank you. Let's admit that person. Let's get started on Staten Island, stay strong, stay safe. So this is something Linda Levin, our wonderful intern, she was sort of developed this and came up with this idea, and it's really grown and snowballed into this magnificent campaign where it started as a public messaging campaign around the Core 4. We've been pushing it out for maybe 2.5 months now, since around Thanksgiving time. And so it started out, like I said, Core 4, but it's sort of taken a mind of its own where we're pushing forward with vaccines and getting vaccine acceptance, public perception around vaccines. And so this is some of Linda's work. You might have seen it around. We've shared it via email, via social media, and it's just really fantastic stuff. Again, we started out with the Core 4 thing. We also have had several partner organizations, and I want to apologize right up front if we're not putting your organization, and you've done a fantastic job. I just know that there are so many organizations that have shared and done a great job. So we're just going to highlight a few here. Thank you and shout out to everybody that has been a big part of this campaign. But one part of it has been these great flyers that Sharmila developed. Sharmila, our executive director. I got the COVID vaccine because blank, and then people put their explanation behind there. So this is PCCS. And as they were getting vaccines, people filled those out and they took those selfies with it. It's just a really fantastic thing. We have some more photos here, as well as those printouts, which are going to be available. We could share those out in the follow-up email to this meeting. Next, we actually partnered with United Activities Unlimited, and they had some of their students come up with some really great flyers in addition to the flyers that Linda had come up with. So we've been sharing these out on social media, as well as we actually have a new intern who's also working with UAU and Staten Island Coad, and she's sort of developed more flyers for us as well. So this is actually her work. It's Asmau is her name. And she's just really done a great job of coming up with really creative, colorful, eye-grabbing things. This is something she made for us to share out around Valentine's Day. So we're just really proud of all the creative content that's coming out and been used for our social media channels. And we encourage any organization that wants to continue to partner with us to please do. Let me go back and Linda, did you want to share your screen, or did you just want to talk about the metrics? Up to
Sure,
you.
Linda speaking. I can share some of the screen. I know English, I promise. I can share my screen and I can show some of the metrics.
Okay, I'm gonna jump off here. Thanks.
Sorry, also managing the Zoom. So 1 second.
Yes, so as Linda's loading that up, I'll just talk a little bit about it. She's been fantastic and all over our social media and just doing a fantastic job of tracking the background metrics that, you know, sometimes go unnoticed. So we've been following the hashtags, Staten Island, stay strong, stay safe. I'll let her take it from here.
Sorry, thank you, Frank. I don't even know if you could see this. So really just briefly, I can't doing this. Okay, so just really briefly, this is the campaign like Frank was talking about and some of the metrics that it can include. So this is just from our toolkit. We've had over 831 clicks on the link to check out our toolkit. And if you haven't seen, this is just basically to create collective engagement on Staten Island just so that we can promote the core for testing as well as vaccine. So I think that it just shows that in the 2 months that we've been launched, November 24th is the exact date. The toolkit has gotten a lot of people accessing it, and this is also just the pledge, because as part of the campaign we also have a pledge, which just basically is I'm going to follow the core for. So we've had 472 people click on that as well. In terms of using the hashtag, over the past 2.5 months altogether, we've had over 400 people use the hashtag or on social media. So it has been growing. From November, we've had this used 6 times, and then in January, about 375 of those. So it's definitely growth. And I'm still in the process of finishing quantifying February. So that's just pretty much it. And I will stop sharing my screen now. And Frank can continue.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Linda. I think at this point, we're ready to turn it over to Dr. Ginny and Tina. Are you both ready to speak?
Sure. Whatever you say, we'll follow your lead.
I'm here as well.
Thank you so much. And again, I'm just gonna be mindful of our time here because we are playing it a little bit by ear and being a little bit fluid, only because we didn't know how many people would be on this call to start. And so Sharmila and I will be figuring out how we're going to do the timing of the breakout groups. So if you hear me chiming in, Dr. Ginny and Tina, that's why.
Great, thank you. And good morning, everyone. I don't know if Tina is on. She is. Okay.
Yeah, I'm here, Jeannie.
Tina, I could get started and then you could fill in everything I left. How's
Okay,
that?
that's fine.
And also obviously give some updates from local hospital perspective. So hi, everyone. Great to see everybody. I'm going to, I could put up 1 or 2 slides, but I'm going to kind of talk through because a lot of these updates are some as recent as yesterday. So they may or may not be on the slide. I'm going to do what I usually do, take it at a slightly more 30,000 foot and then kind of bring it down to a more local level. So bear with me. Let me just see if I can put 1 slide up and then I will. Okay, can everybody see my screen? Yes, okay, great. So let me start before we go into Staten Island resources, just a few milestones, something to put in perspective. We are almost at the 500,000 mark for number of deaths. We're pretty close to that. We're like 499,000 deaths almost. right now. We also have about 28 million cases in the United States. And that's a very sobering statistic. I believe I read somewhere that the number of deaths has surpassed all of the wars combined, World War I to Vietnam. And that is, remember, in less than a year's time. In 1918, the pandemic that we had, there were about 675,000 deaths. And remember, at that time, we had no antibiotics, no ventilators, and very little compared to the medical knowledge, expertise, experience, and technology that we have today. So all of these are really, really sobering statistics. The good news is that we have seen a steady decline over the last 2 weeks, both in the number of cases as well as the number of deaths. And usually I mean, I'm sure you all know deaths usually lag. So the fact that deaths is also coming down is good news. When I say a significant decline, it's to the tunes of 44% in the number of 14-day change in number of cases. So we're seeing about 70,000 new cases a day. We had gone up to over 200,000 cases a day. And in terms of deaths, there's about a 35% decline. And we're currently seeing about 1,800 deaths per day. We had gone up to like 3,000 deaths, maybe more a day. So that's the good news. The other thing that I want to talk about on a global perspective, or at least for the United States, currently there are about 12.5% of the people in the country that have received at least their first dose, and about 5 to 6% that have been fully vaccinated. What does that mean in terms of numbers? About 43.6 million have received the first dose at least, and about 18.9 million people have received both doses, fully vaccinated. In terms of New York State, we have 12.2% have received first dose, 6% both the doses. We actually are in the bottom 10 states in the country. So, I mean, that's a little not great news. In terms of New York City, the numbers are also not that great. And Staten Island is doing better than the other boroughs. We have 8% fully vaccinated and 8% partially vaccinated. The other good news in terms of cases, yesterday, the state rate was down below 3%. It was 2.99 the first time since November. So the cases are definitely going down. All the metrics, hospitalizations, cases, deaths, all trending in the right direction. The not so good news is that, as everybody has probably heard, there are multiple new variants of the virus that are emerging. The one that we've seen most commonly in the United States is the B.1.1.7 or the UK variant. And in the state, in New York State, we have roughly about 80 cases of the B.1.1.7, and we've seen a bunch in New York City as well. As of yesterday, we had our first South African variant case, which was out in Long Island and Nassau. And we have not yet seen the P1 or the Brazilian variant. There's also a fourth variant that was identified in Japan, which has been identified in 13 countries, but we haven't heard much about that. In terms of the variants, I describe them as, if you think of like Lego blocks that fit inside one another, the receptor is kind of the female portion, and the virus is the male. These new variants fit tighter on the receptors in the human body. And because they fit tighter, they spread easily and also potentially can penetrate the cell better and perhaps cause more severe illness. And this is something that is still being studied. In terms of other updates, the good news is that the federal pharmacy distribution has started, and now local pharmacies like CVS, Walgreens, Rite Aid, and others are getting more doses directly from the federal government. A few federally qualified health centers are also scheduled to start getting shipment directly from the federal government. And just so that people understand, typically what happens is the vaccines are distributed from CDC, state, and then city. New York City does get directly shipped from CDC, but they have to get approval from the state. So the city gets a direct shipment, but it's whatever is shipped, they're in communication with the state. There will also be supplemented, so directly through the federal government, and the governor has said whatever the federal government gives the pharmacies, he'll supplement 10% on top of that. There have been other updates in terms of Johnson & Johnson. The EUA was submitted and will be reviewed by the FDA on February 26th. Hopefully that EUA will go through by that week. By the weekend, it will be reviewed by the ACIP, which is the Physician Independent Committee that reviews the data. And then the week after, meaning the first week of March, we should have the ability to have a third vaccine, which is a single dose vaccine. And I'll talk about that in a second. The other update in terms of vaccine, Pfizer has had submitted for the 6th dose approval, and that's been adopted by FDA has approved that. And now when you put in a request in the Central Immunization Registry, you have to take into account that instead of 5 doses, you'll be getting 6 doses out of the vial. The other updates, so I'm going to move into some local updates, but before that, I want to mention also monoclonal antibodies. There's 2 trials going on. One is a prevention trial that was done with nursing home residents, and the other trial is to look at reduction in hospitalization and ED visits, and they found reduction in both of those trials. It's a BLAZE 1 and BLAZE 2 trial. They found reduction in hospitalization and emergency use visits, and they also found reduction in severe cases in nursing home patients. In terms of locally, there are the Staten Island resources. So the updates, as you guys are probably all aware, vaccines are being distributed by, are being administered at both hospitals, at our local 5 federally qualified health centers, certain local pharmacies like Rite Aid, Super Health, and others, urgent care centers, as well as chain pharmacies. And then also we have partnered with some long-term care pharmacies like Annexia and VitaCare that have been working with us to help the developmental disability population and those in congregate care and residential setting. There are also 2 city-run hubs for the general population, Port Richmond High School and Staten Island Technical High School, and 1 site which was specifically for city workers, which is Susan Wagner High School. The new site at the Empire Outlet was launched last week on Thursday. Because there were no first doses left, I heard that they were only doing second doses last week, but my understanding is that they should be opening it out to first doses as well this week. In addition, the city and state have been doing pop-up sites for seniors at NYCHA developments, and also allotting vaccines for seniors at our city hubs and working with our T2 partners, Project Hospitality and Community Health Action of Staten Island. I'm not going to go into how you can schedule. Everybody knows by now the New York City Vaccine Finder link. You can put in your zip code and find the closest location. It's been very difficult to find vaccine slots. What I have been recommending to everybody within your organization, start to make lists of those that are interested, stratify those lists and keep them handy. Oftentimes we find out, partners have extra doses at the end of the day. And I know that at my office, we're also helping seniors and keeping running lists. And then when we have an opportunity to hear from one of the partners that are offering the vaccine, we sort of go through our list and send people that are eligible. Staten Island University Hospital is offering it through their Go Health Urgy Center, as well as through a site stood up at 777 Seaview Avenue. And I've included not only the link here, and we can share all of these links, but also they have a resource for vaccines that you can access through the link that's included. Tina will talk a little bit more about what's happening at Richmond University Medical Center. These updates I already went through. I think indoor dining, everybody's probably following that pretty closely because I know all of us are eager to go out and eat if possible. So right now it's at 25% capacity, expected to expand to 35% by this Friday. We talked about the new variants already. And then the other updates are the window to receive the second dose for both Pfizer and Moderna has been extended to 42 days. It was 21 days for Pfizer and 28 days for Moderna, but CDC has expanded it. The federal government has already increased supply to New York State by 20%, and it's expected to ramp up further. And we talked about the outlet and J&J, as well as the EUA for Johnson & Johnson. Just a word about the new recommendation for masks and tighter fitting masks. So this was studied, especially given the new variants that are in play. And the CDC and now New York City has updated their guidance on face coverings. The recommendation is to wear a tighter fitting cloth mask over a medical procedure mask or a surgical mask, for instance. 2 surgical masks really don't help because the surgical masks, for those of us that use it, you know, they have sort of gaps on the sides. So a tighter fitting cloth mask over it and multi-layered masks are what are recommended. And they found that in the studies that they did, that reduces risk by 95%, both of transmitting as well as contracting the virus. The post-vaccination recommendation was changed by CDC, but has not yet been updated and adopted by New York State, even though they have said that they plan on adopting it. And the new guidance that CDC put out was people who have been fully vaccinated against the COVID-19, against coronavirus. That means receive 2 doses, can skip quarantine if they're exposed to someone infected with the virus as per the new guidance. But they must be fully vaccinated, having received both their shots. And this only applies for 3 months after. I will say that I have heard from a number of colleagues and physician friends that they have multiple cases of individuals that had COVID in early on March, April, May, recontracted COVID early this year and got very sick. I know of a few doctors that had patients that succumbed as well. So I just want to put it out there. I know that CDC has been saying 90 days, and I think for now, that's the guidance we're trying to follow. So if you've had the vaccine or even had COVID, 90 days after, there's data to show that you still have antibodies and you're protected. The question always comes up in terms of, you know, immunity, natural immunity versus immunity, post-vaccination. And this is something that I think we have to be careful as we message. A lot of people think I had COVID. Why do I need to get the vaccine? The antibodies.
Dr. Ginny, just before you continue, just going back to the first piece in terms of the 90 days, just to let everybody know that the 90 days is really if you had antibody treatment. If you didn't, you can receive the vaccine after 14 days after symptoms or after that positive test. You are able to actually receive the vaccine.
No, I wasn't talking about the not being able to receive the vaccine. I was saying that the protection lasts for 90 days, but you're right. That's a good point, Tina. So if somebody's received the monoclonal antibodies, they have to wait 90 days post to be able to get the vaccine. What I was saying is that if you've had COVID or if you've had the vaccine, CDC is right now saying you're protected for at least 90 days. We don't know past 90 days. So that was kind of the update in terms of the other one thing that's came out recently was that a study is finding that for those that had COVID, when they received 1 shot of Pfizer, apparently they are mounting a very good antibody response. And so that's still being evaluated, whether or not the second dose for those that have had COVID can be delayed or is even needed, because they found that they're 500 times the amount of antibodies that are being launched, but this is something that is still being studied. So I'm going to pause at that. I threw out a lot of information. Tina, please feel free to talk about Rumsey, and then also add if there's any other updates that I did not include.
And just one quick thing to jump in here, Frank here. Just one quick thing. We're looking forward to Tina's updates, and also if we could leave a little bit of time, probably leading into 11:15, 11:20 for some Q&A, that would be really great. Thank you.
Sure, Frank. In fact, I do prefer to actually have the Q&As than to go through so much of the things that are really not of that importance. But just on a general scale, one of the things to add to what Dr. Jenny said was also that as of this week, this coming week, the Pfizer allotment for any site is actually increased from 975 to 1,170 doses. So they are looking at increasing it so that people will actually have more on hand to provide to inoculate with patients. With that being said, in terms of what Rumsey has actually done, we have actually given out close to 7,000 first dose and another 4,500 second dose in total as of yesterday. And we continue to vaccinate. Last week, we had absolutely no vaccines because of the weather and all the other issues that the country was experiencing. And as a result, we are not expecting to get any vaccine until maybe tomorrow or Wednesday of this week. So that's where we're at, and we continue to prioritize. We do have the look at the priority list every single time we're scheduling people. We make sure phase 1A is the first target, and once that phase 1A is complete, then we roll into the phase 1B. But so far, we have actually been getting a lot of community members coming in, especially 65 and older, trying to get vaccinated, and we have actually separate from that, we have looked to the nursing homes. We have offered assistance to the nursing homes, to EMS, to all those other phase 1A priority group to assist them in the process, knowing that the contract or the process that first existed between the nursing homes and the pharmacy was a one-shot deal, and after that was finished, then there were no way in which for them to actually continue getting their staff vaccinated. So we have been helping in that process as well. That's it overall. So we can take, I did see a question in the group regarding the vaccine in terms of if you have been if you had COVID, if you're still required to take the two shots, the two vaccines. I have not seen anything from the CDC, the states, or anyone who states that we should only be doing one. The way in which the system is set up is that we are set up to give two vaccines. Does that mean that there are people who have not declined the second shot? No, there are a couple of people, not many, but there are a couple of people who have declined the second, but that was mainly because of adverse reaction that they had to the first. So we remain in continuing the process of providing two vaccines, even with what was stated in terms of the effectiveness of the first, as opposed to adding maybe a 4 or 5% to getting the second dose. And Frank, you can open it up for questions.
Excellent. So I just dropped a note in the chat. Please feel free, if you have questions for Dr. Jenny or Tina, feel free to drop those in the chat or raise your hand. I think at this point also, we'll have people be able to, if you want to feel comfortable jumping on screen or just speaking up, you can unmute yourself and pose a question.
Hey, Frank, this is Joe Gallo from SIUH. How are you?
Hi, Joe.
Good. I just wanted to give a quick update. Empire outlets. We opened Friday. It was Friday and Saturday this week. They gave out the max doses. They're going to reopen this Wednesday. they're gonna have enough doses to dose the max dose per day. I think it's 180 a day, between 224 to 34. Also, like Tina said, our numbers are going down right now. We're currently at, I think, 155 at North, the campus. Last week, to put in perspective, we are over 190. So we are going down pretty quickly. Same thing we've given out. Let me get the number. First doses we've given out at both our campuses, 7,700 first doses and 5,600 second doses. 777 Seaview, we're looking to reopen again, hopefully in the public this week also, and I'll get an update on that. And that's it for SIUH for both sites.
Thank you, Joe. Yeah, that's good to hear.
Yep.
We have a question here from David. Is there any advice coming out of the DOHMH regarding requiring employees to get the vaccine?
So I don't think that the DOHMH is going to, they haven't put anything out. That being said, employers can sort of make this decision on their own. And I know there was a recent incident where a company required the young individual to get vaccinated, and her, I guess she didn't want to because she was in childbearing age, and she was terminated. But I don't believe that there's any guidance from the city or state in that requiring employees to get vaccination. We don't know what's going to come down the pike. We know that obviously schools, for instance, have required children to be vaccinated before going back to school. But we don't know what guidance is going to be required. It might also be it might change for travel. You might need a vaccine passport. I mean, these are things that have been are being evaluated, but to my knowledge, there's no current guidance. Tina, do you have anything to add, or Joe?
So the state themselves, in terms of Governor Cuomo, have actually came out and said that he's not going to require vaccination to take place in any setting. However, my thought, that's only my personal thought, it would be very difficult for them to actually require it when not everyone have actually gotten the opportunity to actually say they can refuse it. So if you don't have sufficient to actually provide to everyone, then you can't make a requirement on something. Understanding it's very similar to the influenza vaccine, where we didn't, at no point were we required. Some organizations have actually gone the route of saying that they require, but what they have done is, for hospitals per se, what we have done is say that if you do not receive the vaccine, then this is what you were required to do in terms of wearing a mask or completing a declination form to say that you are declining using it, things like that. So even though there isn't a mandate that is in place, there are the potential for organizations to come up with their own suggestion or ideas as to how they will implement that process.
So just in response to Adrian's question on the trial, including pregnant women, Pfizer has enrolled 4,000 women in a trial between the ages of 24 and 34, and these brave women have volunteered. I know that in speaking with a lot of colleagues of mine in obstetrics, the guidance that they're giving, and also speaking to others, is, you have to remind women that are pregnant that they are more at risk for contracting the virus, more at risk for getting seriously ill, and more at risk for getting hospitalized if they're pregnant, because the body is sort of in an immunocompromised state. A couple of colleagues, and so there's also guidance through ACOG, which is the American College of Obstetrics and Gynecology. There's guidance through CDC and the city and state health departments. Few physicians I spoke to said what they tell their pregnant patients is that you can take it in the third trimester. I know some hesitate to take it in the first and second trimester, but that's kind of what some of my colleagues have been talking about. So, but the trial is underway. It's a Pfizer trial with 4,000 women. I don't know if that answers the question, Adrian.
We have another question from Susanna. Dr. Ginny, I understand you correctly that we don't yet understand how long the protections of the vaccination last. Currently, we are just clear on a 90-day protection, but we are seeing that antibodies due to having contracted may not last longer than a year.
Yes. So what I was trying to say before was that there are individuals, now we're seeing more and more that are getting sick even though they got COVID, and they're recontracting infection. The reason that CDC has said 90 days protection post infection is because that's how far out they know for sure that you have antibodies and you're protected. Beyond that is still being studied. So if someone had COVID last year in April, May, June, early on, and when we started to see SARS-CoV-2, they are not necessarily protected. If they haven't been vaccinated, they're not necessarily protected from that first infection. Also, if you got COVID, it doesn't mean it's going to protect you from the new variants, right? So the new variants, when they enter your body, antibodies may not be able to recognize and fight against them. So that's one part of it. The second part of it is post-vaccination. Again, the trials post-vaccination, remember, the reason we're still in phase 4 is that the way the trials, and it's still an emergency use authorization, is we don't have enough long-term data to tell us how long this protection lasts. So what they're saying is that the CDC's new guidance in terms of not quarantining post-exposure. So if you've been fully vaccinated, they're saying you don't need to quarantine post-exposure to a individual. And the reason they're saying that is that only applies for 90 days post-vaccine, because they know for sure that 90 days out post-vaccine, you're still going to be protected. We haven't studied it further out. Does that answer the question, Susanna?
Yes, thank you.
But just to add, there has been no concrete directives that came out to say that New York City or state will stop that quarantine requirement. So there isn't anything that have come out to address that piece as of yet.
Right, and that's what I mentioned. The state has not yet adopted it, even though they have said that they plan on adopting it. So for all intents and purposes, for New York City and New York State, the quarantine still applies until the state says, yes, we are going to follow and adopt CDC guidance.
Thank you both. We actually have one last question, and then we have an announcement coming up before our breakout session. So the last question here, are there vaccine wait lists that hospitals, FQHCs, CBOs have for community members who are having difficulties making appointments through citywide scheduler?
So I'll take the first part of it. Tina, you can comment. Tina and Joe, you can comment on the second part, even though it's kind of, the answer is kind of similar. My suggestion is that if you live in a particular zip code or neighborhood and there are federally qualified health centers, so outside of the city hubs, because the city hubs are not keeping that wait list, to my knowledge. But if you're living in a certain neighborhood or zip code and there's federally qualified health center or a hospital, there's no harm in calling and saying, I can come, I qualify, I can show up in 20 minutes or a half hour if there's vaccines left over at the end of the day. If you have a wait list, I'd love to be on it. That's what I'm suggesting that people do. I know that there are wait lists. They're probably pretty long wait lists. And the reason for that is that it's typical to have extra doses, even with Moderna, which is what is being offered in the community. And as you heard before, Pfizer is now 6 doses, but Moderna, sometimes you get 11 out of the vial, sometimes even 12. So that's my recommendation. And I know hospitals also have wait lists, but Tina, Joe, please feel free to comment and add to that.
So Richmond University Medical Center, we do have wait list, we do have a scheduling system, in terms of, unfortunately, it's one of the antiquated ones where you actually have to call in. If you do leave a message on the phone, we actually pull that message and we put you in the queue for you to get vaccinated. So a lot of people may realize that a week later they actually get an appointment after making it a week prior. But we do have a waiting list, and we actually make sure that whoever is in that queue gets first preference than the ones that enter the queue afterwards. So we are trying to follow that protocol. With that being said, understand that there are times that you would actually fall below only because someone in phase 1A bumps up to the top based on what the state requires us to do from an eligibility perspective. So if you're a healthcare worker, you work in a nursing home, EMS, you're at a doctor's office, you will get first preference over a 65-year-old and older, or someone with comorbidities, or a grocery store worker. That is how we're actually doing it. So understanding that, yes, we do have a wait list, and we do have people who pull that, who pull the information from the call log and enter that, and you will get a call back in terms of getting an appointment.
I know that I said that was the last question, but one more question came in from Wayne here. Will the city eventually allocate any of the vaccines to the dialysis facilities? And we'll go, once we finish this one, we'll jump over to Sharmila for an announcement.
So the city is asking the dialysis center and a lot of those facilities to partner with other facilities that have actually vaccine. And that's where they've been as it stands right now. They're not looking, because one of the things you have to understand, because of how the vaccine is being offered, you give, say, DCI 975, well, now it's 1,170 doses. Who are they vaccinating? It will be more than themselves. So what they're really doing is just looking at the hubs, the hospitals, and some of these other existing, like the FQHCs, all of those existing areas, to partner with those smaller entities to actually have vaccination done.
Frank, before you pass it on, can I just make two
Absolutely.
really quick comments? One is for the group homes and DD providers that are on the call, on the Zoom. If I know that since the new recommendation includes those with underlying medical illness, if you still need to partner with an FQHC or a local long-term care pharmacy partner, please reach out to me as soon as possible. And then the other piece of it is if you have a population that's either in the congregate setting, you can reach out to me as well. And then if you have seniors that you serve over 65 in North Shore zip codes, and specifically 4 zip codes, 01, 03, 04, and 10, please either reach out to myself or Reverend Jackson. We can, there's typically the city's been working with the T2 partners to allot them certain number of vaccines for seniors at the city hubs on the weekends. So please reach out if you have seniors that qualify in the North Shore zip codes. And then with that, I'm going to hand it back to you, Frank.
Frank, I'm sorry, Frank, just 30 seconds.
Go right ahead, yeah.
Just to let you guys know that for the group homes, which Dr. Ginny and I went through NICEM to find out what the requirements were in terms of whether you guys are able to get N95 masks from the city PPE stockpile. I know Dr. Ginny was actually forwarding emails to the group homes to let you guys be aware of it. But since the new variants and all the changes and adjustments that were made in the CDC guidance, the New York City stockpile now allows group homes to actually go to that stockpile if you sign up to order N95 masks for your staff. And that's it, Frank. Thanks.
Awesome. I'm going to turn it over to Sharmila, who has an exciting announcement.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. Thanks for joining us. And thanks, Frank, Dr. Ginny, and Tina. We learned last week that the Staten Island Coad was selected to join the city's advisory group for the Pandemic Response Institute. So we were very excited about that invitation and wanted to share it with you all, our partners. There are about 10 or so members representing various stakeholder groups, including hospitals, community health centers, academia, industry, foundations, and community groups. And so it's truly an honor for our SIMFA and the Staten Island Coad to have a voice at this table. I want to thank a lot of you around this group that have provided feedback to the city as part of the Response Institute RFI that they had, I believe, in December, and Adrian Abadi, who sat on one of the first conversations this group had last month, that really informed sort of where we're headed. We will be meeting over the next, I want to say, month or two to help provide the city with high-level input on the vision and potential activities of this Response Institute. So things like, how broad should the agenda be? Should it focus on all aspects of the cycle of preparedness, including prevention, response, and resiliency? How much should be about research versus coordination and training? And what would be most useful for the city to offer in terms of furthering the goals of this Pandemic Institute? We'll be sure to keep our group, all of you, posted on the conversations and what we're able to share out. But again, we thank you all for your support and being partners with us in this, because you all know on Staten Island, the Coad has been around since Superstorm Sandy, and we've just been growing and deepening our work through our partnerships with New York City Department of Health, New York City Emergency Management, and all of you. And so I know that this wouldn't have happened if all of our voices weren't at the table. I also want to share, and I'll let them do a little bit more. I don't know if both groups are on, but two of our organizations were given a grant from New York City Emergency Management, and Jill Cornell, our mighty partner, is on the line with us today. And we're very excited that Project Hospitality and the JCC were given, I think it's the first time NISM has done something like this, a community engagement grant to do some work in particular areas of Staten Island that have been hardest hit by this pandemic. And so I'm going to turn it over to Reverend Karen Jackson, and I'm not sure who else is on from PH, and David, I don't know if you're able to share about the work that you'll be doing in some of our communities with through this opportunity. Reverend Jackson.
Good morning, everyone. It's great to be with you. I do want to introduce someone. Anne Marie Selzer is on this general meeting, and she is serving as the community organizer for Stapleton. So we're so pleased to be working even more closely with New York City Emergency Management to do this very grassroots type of emergency preparedness work in the neighborhoods of Stapleton and St. George. Our first project is to conduct an unmet needs assessment. And if you live in Stapleton, if you volunteer in Stapleton, if you serve clients in that area, we would really love it if you could fill out that Google form that Anne Marie just shared in the chat box, giving us your insights on problems and solutions in our community related to healthcare, utility assistance, rent assistance. We would really love to see your insights there. I'll also mention that we are putting together a citywide unmet needs assessment through our unmet needs work group with New York City VOAD. And that will be a particularly long survey, but a really useful survey for getting insights from organizations all across New York City on needs of their clients at this present moment in time, that we can then compare to the same survey that we've put out twice so far in the last year to see what have the shifts in unmet needs been using that same data collection tool over the year that we've been doing this work together. And I wanted to say a big thank you to Ginny, not only for helping Project Hospitality to get our staff and clients vaccinated, but also working with a group of immigrant organizations, service organizations on Staten Island. A recent project is that we put together a Google form to collect information on seniors on Staten Island looking for help getting a vaccine appointment. So particularly for seniors who live in those zip codes she mentioned of 10301, 10303, 10304, or 10310. Health and Hospitals has been giving Project Hospitality several hundred appointment slots to fill every weekend for that very specific demographic group. And we would love to receive your referrals. I can put the contact information of our program director, Morlai Kamara, in the chat box. And then finally, we have a fairly healthy fund this year for assisting Staten Islanders with rent or utility arrears caused by the pandemic. And so if you have a client in that situation where it was a COVID-19 cause for their rent arrears, but they have the ability to pay going forward, they just need help with maybe 1 or 2 months, you can email those referrals to our Help Center Program Director, Fanny Cordova, and I'll put her information in the chat box as well. So thank you, Sharmila, for giving us some time to share on those projects.
Thank you so much. And Anne-Marie, we're glad that you're here. We will make sure to send out all the resources that have been mentioned, the links to various surveys and additional information in a follow-up email that Frank will send out. I know I mentioned the JCC was the other organization that also received support from NISM. David, I'm not sure if you have more information, but I know that I believe that grant focuses on Willowbrook, and they will probably be doing similar outreach that Karen mentioned is happening in Stapleton and St. George. David, I don't know if you want to share any more. I don't believe your colleagues are on today.
Yeah, thank you, Sharmila. I don't have any additional information, but we're always honored to work with Project Hospitality, our community partners, and thrilled to be going at this together. And I'm sure Nishama or Arit will have more to fill in. But in fact, I was surprised to hear, but I'm thrilled. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. All right, Frank, back to you.
Thank you, thank you. So moving on, we're looking at about 30 minutes left. And again, being mindful of everybody's time, what we're going to do next is jump into some breakout sessions. We're going to probably have around 8 or 9 people in each session. And let me paste our discussion questions in the chat. You should be able to see those when we go into our breakout sessions. But these are just conversation starters for us each to address regarding our own organizations, our organizational needs, challenges we faced, success stories that we've had, how the Staten Island Coad could help. So I think what we're going to do is break out for about 10 minutes into these groups. And we were originally going to do some structured share out moments where we have people go for 5 minutes from each group. But what we've been having so far is this fantastic community discussion. So we'll come back and we'll have more community discussion. Dr. Ginny and Tina are on deck in case we need them as pinch hitters, as always, to answer some questions and chime in. So thank you all for being here, and we'll be breaking out shortly.
Okay, you all should be seeing the message now to join. If you don't see the message to join, please let me know.
I don't see it.
I don't see it.
Okay, let's see
Don't
here.
see it.
Let me try again. Those of you on the phone, let's see, how come you're not on us? Did anyone get in a room?
I did. I got a pop-up that asked me to join a room.
Huh.
Ginny
All
said
right.
she's in room 3, but she's all by herself.
All right. This is odd. All right, let's see.
And if technical difficulties,
I'm gonna just kind of do it manually. It's not letting people join for some reason.
I just got a pop-up for it.
I got mine.
Great. Frank, are you still here?
I'm still here, yeah. If we-
Okay.
I was
If
going
you
to
could
say,
just ask Shirley to help do the last room, maybe just send her a message to facilitate in her room. That would be great. And then I've got someone's got. Looks like some of you did not move. Frank, are you,
I jumped to a breakout room, but then
was
once I
someone
think-
in there?
no, it was just me. But once I
Okay, now you should be in room 1. Do you want to, can you go back in there or no?
think I can just go. Let me see. Breakout rooms.
Can you get into 1?
Yeah, I'm trying. Join. Okay, I'm gonna jump in there.
Okay, I'm going
Alright.
to try to move some of these folks. Maureen, I tried to, you should have gotten a symbol to get into one of the rooms.
Okay. As people trickle back, I think we should all be back by now. So thank you all for joining us in those breakout sessions. I know that that was, I was jumping from room to room and I heard some interesting conversations, some interesting discussions. So I think going back to where we were at, we've got about 13 minutes here on the call. Using our, first of all, thank you to our steering committee members who helped facilitate some of those breakout rooms. And thank you to Dr. Ginny and Tina for the discussion earlier. But I think this is a good opportunity to have a continuation of that discussion in light of the questions that we were bringing up. We were going to have somewhat of a formal share out session where we would have a representative from each group discuss, but let's keep it a little bit free form. And if you have any thoughts or anything that you took away from those breakouts, chime in and feel free to share with the group here.
Frank, I'm actually going to volunteer Melissa from our group to
That sounds
share
good.
out something that they've done at HeartShare to help with the challenge of not being able to get back appointments. So Melissa, would you mind sharing out?
Yeah, sure. So one of the things that we're piloting throughout the month of February is we've hired temps that sit at our headquarters. Unfortunately, our headquarters is in Brooklyn, not in Staten Island, although we have programming in Staten Island. But we've actually hired what we call vaccine appointment specialists. And their full job is basically they sit in our main lobby area downstairs, equipped with computers and equipped with documentation from the CDC, from OMH, DOHMH on vaccines. They're there to provide information. They're not there to give medical guidance because they're not medical professionals. But they do help people navigate getting appointments, because one of the things that we've realized, especially when this first started, is not knowing how to get them. And what's the trick? Do you wake up at 6 a.m. and do you refresh every 15 minutes? So we hired some temps that are very tech savvy, who know all the different websites that are out there, and, oh, let me try this place, let me try that place. Oh, this place you have to call, this place you have to go on this website. Here's where you do the hubs. Maybe checking that $50 New York Times website that was developed. And just basically being a technical resource to people to be able to make their vaccination appointments, because we're not all that as tech savvy as you might need to be. So just having them there, they're not actually doing, because I know there's attestations that people have to sign. So they'll like turn the computer to the person and have them do that. They're not making the attestation for them. But they are a technical resource as far as jumping from website to website on getting people vaccination appointments.
I thought that was a great model to share. And also, we know that there's a lot of people in our community that are volunteering. So, this might be an opportunity to learn from HeartShare what they've done in terms of equipping the temps that were hired, training them, and what kind of job description. And if there are others that in the community that might be willing to volunteer, this is perhaps a model we could try to, either adopt or mirror.
Excellent.
I like it a lot, Melissa. Thank you for that.
Any other question? I want to take this opportunity also, if there were any leftover questions for Dr. Ginny or Tina that somebody wanted to ask in the earlier session, they can absolutely go ahead and do so. But particularly, the final question, which I'm not sure if every group had the opportunity to get to, how can the Staten Island Coad help, in these circumstances? If you're not sure, feel free to reach out to myself or Sharmila following this. We want to be a resource. And so a lot of times people don't necessarily have a specific ask, or maybe they do and they don't know if we can help, but we want you to feel free to always be able to reach out to us in those types of situations. Thank you, Linda, for dropping those email addresses in the chat.
So in our group, we actually spoke about this briefly, and what Nora indicated is that the educational campaign that we have been doing does help. It's like we're constantly reminding people over and over the importance of being vaccinated and the safety pertaining to it. and the people who you may not have gotten in the first round or the second go around or the third go around, each time you do it, you're getting a few more people trickling in. So the more you actually spend stating the message and restating the entire thing actually helps those people who are on the borderline as to whether they want to receive it or not.
Jill, sorry, I see Jill's hand raised. But Dr. Ginny, did you just have a small
I
thing?
just wanted to add one quick thing. I think everybody knows this already, but I just want to say, if you need help, your organization, in terms of education, material, webinars, speakers, please reach out to either Frank, Sharmila, myself, or Tina. I think I'm doing about 3 to 5 a week. I've done it. And the thing that I find has worked the best is when you do it, for a smaller group that is part of an organization rather than just a larger forum. I think people, when they listen to their colleagues, to people that they're familiar with, and people share out stories, ask questions, I think that helps with the hesitancy. And we've seen that in many settings. We've seen that in the hospital setting, as Tina just mentioned. We've seen in nursing homes, as they found, colleagues taking it and having no effects or mild side effects, and others, medical providers and others taking it, sharing stories of not only their own experience with COVID, but their experience of the vaccine. That is a great way to sort of improve the hesitancy. So I'm always happy to help. I can tag team with DOH. I could do it, on my own. And if we don't have the resources, we know how to get them. So please reach out if you need help.
And just to actually share my own experience at my hospital, to be honest with you, similar to Chris, we had a lot of hesitancy during the first go around of asking staff. But what I do recognize is that even if they change their mind, your staff is not going to come to you and tell you that they changed their mind. They are still going to expect that you're constantly going to go to them, reinforcing, re-asking, and then they actually will say yes. So even though you leave a broad statement out there to say, if you change your mind, contact such and such a person, that does not work. You literally have to go again and ask them whether or not they are interested. So keep that line of communication open where you're constantly asking your staff and people within your group as to whether or not they're interested in receiving the vaccine.
That's good guidance. Jill, we see your hand raised. Thank you.
Thanks, and great discussion as always. There are also, I think that the volunteers helping is a huge and growing group. I see it on social media. There are Facebook groups that are just devoted to people who are volunteering their time to help people sign up, which is tremendous. I mean, it's all over the state and I'm sure all over the country, and it's needed. I serve on the Language Access Task Force, and I'm going to bring back some feedback. Wayne's going to email me some specifics regarding the dialysis centers. I know that he has been advocating both with the Coad and with Dr. Ginny, but I want to give another place where we can push through concerns, and that is through the Language Access Task Force. It's a very small task force, and it's just there to ensure that language access is considered from any initiative that the city's pushing out regarding vaccines. It's actually the Language Access Task Force is for any emergency, but right now it's focused on the vaccines getting out. And to do that, we've increased communication with the Vaccine Command Center, which for any vaccine concern, you really have to go to them. And I have to keep remembering it because I'm just starting to get familiar with the people that are working there. And their whole focus is to coordinate the city's vaccine response. So what you guys are talking about here includes the state response too, just to make that clear. And I'm glad that you reinforce the distinctions between what the state's doing and what the city's doing, because believe you me, it's confusing even for those of us who have to work in it all the time. So I'm going to do that. That's just another resource. And because New York City is such a I'm not going to say Death Star, but a giant ship, right? That you need to use all the different access points to get your point across. So you use the Coad, you use the BP's office, you use your contacts at DOHMH, who they're overwhelmed, as we all know, because they're just working constantly, and me and what we do, and the health and medical unit, which I don't have really anything to do with at New York City Emergency Management, but I do have something to do with this language access task force, and I can get things into the vaccine command center via my deputy commissioner. So I just wanted to make sure that you know about that. And also that they are asking the EPIC committee or coalition of the health department for the city is asking specifically for CBOs that are working with older adults to help them make this contact. So my challenge to you all is you're all very well connected here. Who's not at the table that is working with older adults who that we could either bring in here, because obviously that would be the best place, but also that you could then connect to the health department because they recognize that they have to do deeper engagement with older adults. So they're working with DFTA, and I know NYCHA's got also their own vaccination thing happening. And there's a couple of different ways that people are getting vaccinated at NYCHA. So that is there, but we also know that there are groups that are some privately funded, whether they're faith-based, that may be doing this work with older adult populations, and we need to get connected to them for those missing folks.
Thank you so much, Jill. Neil, I see you're patiently waiting there with your hand raised.
Okay, well, Jill jumped on the discussion on the dialysis population that was brought up in the breakout room that I was in. So thanks for bringing that up, Jill. It was brought up by Wayne, and he says a lot of his organizations that he represents, that their staff has been vaccinated because being the 1A priority, and they're having the usual problems with some staff not taking it. But the main concern is the patients who wish to get the vaccination, that they don't have the physical ability to go wait online in some of these facilities. So what can be done about that was a question he brought up. One of the issues we're doing at Volunteer Heart Ambulance to address the vaccination availability is we've had some of our EMTs be trained into how to give the injections, that now that that's allowed, and they've been going to the pods, specifically Port Richmond, and helping out, because again, if you don't get the staff in the pods, you're going to cut down the number of people vaccinated. So that might be something that people that have healthcare professionals on their staff might want to look into, is how can they go and help out at the pods.
So just a quick question to Wayne and anyone from dialysis. These patients are being treated at a center, correct?
Correct.
Now, is there the feasibility or the capability of actually being able to see how we could actually do it while the person is here for treatment?
If so, yes, the short answer is yes. If we had access to it, we certainly could. With dialysis, the only contraindication is if we gave it on a dialysis day, let's say, then we would have to hold all meds during treatment. That's the only.
So the question I have is, how do they actually get to the appointment? Because we're talking about accessibility, and if they're able to get to the appointment for dialysis, even if we brought it, say, and again, I'm saying DCI because you guys are part of RUMC, so I'm really just trying to think about that in my head. They have to come to the site. So even if there was an appointment made for them to get the vaccine and not necessarily on their dialysis day, they would still have to come to the actual site, correct?
That is correct. We wouldn't be able, well, I shouldn't say we wouldn't be able to do it for the stretcher-bound patients. I mean, I guess we could. I don't know, how feasible that would be though for, an administration site.
Okay. So Wayne, let me take this conversation with you offline. Is there anyone else, any other dialysis center? Because I do know I did help staff from, I think it's internal rehab, the other dialysis, I know I did help to get their staff done as well. Are they on the line?
No, I don't think anybody else except me. This is Yosef.
Hi, Yosef. Okay, so Wayne, let me have a conversation with you and see how that could potentially work.
Right,
And
and
we'll take it
Tina,
offline.
yeah, Tina, let me just say though, because Rumsey, you all have been amazing. We have started to send some of our patients, by the way. Dr. Pepe, called Rose last week, and then we started doing that. And you all have basically, inoculated all of our staff, and we can't thank you enough for that. It's just
No,
these
thank
other
you.
challenges, that we face.
Yeah,
But
because
you
you guys fall underneath my group in terms of who I have as phase 1A. I don't really do the phase 1B, but I do phase 1A. So I just need to understand how I would be able to put you guys in the loop. So we'll have the conversation offline.
Thanks,
All right?
Tina.
No
Take
problem.
care.
I know we're a few minutes over time here. I just wanted to,
Just-
Dr. Ginny?
I'm sorry, no, just to also mention to Yusuf, if there are others that don't fall under Rumsey that still would need it, we do have some pharmacy partners that might also be able to bring the vaccine to the dialysis centers. So maybe we'll just do a small meeting with the dialysis agencies as a follow-up.
Sounds good.
Right, yeah.
That would be amazing, Dr. Mantello. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Dr. Ginny. And thank you all for being here and making this a really, really special conversation. We look forward to seeing you at the next general meeting. That's going to be in April. So thank you all. And we know we're at time here. So we'll let you all go and we'll be on the lookout for a follow-up email. And please, 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 if you have the opportunity to fill out that needs assessment survey or know organizations that need either PPE or other resources, please be on the lookout for that link in the email. It's also in the chat box here. Thank you.